Okay, new format for you. What the hell just happened? New format for you guys. Gonna have a presentation here. Might do this more in the future. Excuse the shirt and trackies combo. I just came back from work and I'm just trying to get in the right vibe, the right setting. I want to be comfortable but also kind of smart. And I've got a slide ahead already. Welcome, right? Gallagher Premiership semi-final review. That should say preview. We're previewing the games. It's coming out before the games, okay? Thought I would just take this time and use this presentation to help my ADHD rattled brain to just kind of go through my thoughts for the games coming up this weekend, some predictions, some things to look out for. So yeah, without further ado, let's get on to what you've already seen already. I just stepped on my computer. First game. See if the laser pointer works. Laser pointer does not work. Bath, Bristol. Bath at home. Big game. And I think the theme for both these semi-finals is really like, it's like versus like. You know, these are two teams like to play expansively. They're going to attack it anywhere from the pitch. They want to make a spectacle of it. And so I think this is probably the most exciting game of the weekend in the Premiership. And I think the second one for me is exciting because I'm a Leicester Tigers fan. But enough of that game later. This one's exciting because not only is this going to be exciting between two teams that want to be expansive, this team has historically had this team's lunch like the last, I think Pat Lam was saying 11 and 14 games. It's a bit of a fluffed up statistic. You know, look at the last time that Bristol played Bath. Bath played all the shags, all the second teamers. So that probably didn't really count. And there's probably been a couple of games along the line that happened. Premiership Cup is probably another one of those as well. Nobody counts the Premiership Cup. But suffice to say, there still is a trend of this team eating this team's lunch. And with a team this good and being this far ahead in the Premiership, that's something to note. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you kind of like the last two times these two teams individually had put like their first team out. And I'm just going to show those teams rather than making my own predictions of a 15, because I'm lazy, but we'll talk about what I think will be different anyway. So, on the left, you've got the Bath team from their final win in the Challenge Cup against Leal, and Max Jonu's name there, which we'll get into. And this is the Bristol team that I believe was the one that played in, not the last game against Quins, I think it was the game before that. Was it against Bath? Don't know. The important thing is this is the Bristol team that I think will most likely start on Saturday. So, without further ado, okay, let's talk about this Bath team. Maybe a bit too far away for you, so I'm going to read out the names. So, front row of Ben Obanu, Tom Dunn, Will Stewart. Okay, Ben Obanu should be playing for England in the summer. He's an excellent scrummager, gets around the park. Tom Dunn, absolute workhorse of a unit, been in the Premiership for donkey's years. Pretty sure he's probably 45, but he plays like he's at least 29. Guy gets around the park, does a lot of work, does your scrummaging, your line outing to a good degree. Will Stewart, British and Irish line. And then I think we get into something interesting here with both the second rows, both for Bristol and for Bath. Forgot the name of the team, don't know how, it's literally on the page. I think both second row combinations are arguably the weakest point for both teams, but because they're the weakest point for both teams, they're both kind of like an equal weakness that cancels each other out, right? So I think something interesting here is that because of our second rowers and our guys getting lifted up, which I think if you look at the rest of the team, like the back rowers for Bristol and Bath can be made up with numbers with that, I'm rambling, maybe the line out is a weakness that either team can exploit and try and steal ball off of. Maybe putting your team down in territory and trying to compete for line outs, maybe a way to do it to try and steal the ball. We'll get into that later because I want to make a point about that. Okay, so forward pack. That's the second rows. Bath. In the last time against Leon, we've got Guy Pepper, Miles Reid, Sam Underhill. Obviously, Sam Underhill not in the team. Chops heads. The executioner, play Undertaker theme. Right? He's out. He's red carded. However, I suspect Miles Reid will probably go to that open side flanker spot and Barbary will fill in. Or, Miles Reid, Guy Pepper might move to 7 and they might put Ted Hill in. Personally, for this game, if I'm Johan, if I'm the Bath head coach, I'm putting Ted Hill in. Ted Hill, a bit more mobile than Arthur Barbary. I think this is going to be a quick game. You want mobile forwards around the pack. You want them around the field, going around there, getting the breakdowns. Bring on Alpha Barbary and probably the 65 minute just to have some power at the end. I would go for mobility in this game. Don't know what they're going to do, but that's my prediction. So, anyway, let's talk about Bath's backs. Ben Spencer, Finn Russell. Arguably the best halfback pairing in the Premiership right now. Ben Spencer, everyone keeps saying, why isn't he England? Why isn't he England? Why isn't he England? My personal argument is that he's 32. Let's give it to someone that's a little bit younger and have a bit more development, given we're 2 years away from a World Cup. Nevertheless, probably still has a lot of time. Could argue he could make it to the next World Cup. Deserves to be in the England team, I think, if it wasn't for his age. His age is the only thing I think that keeps him out of it. Finn Russell. Need I say more? Excellent player. Probably the best 10 in the British and Irish lines at the moment. Finn Smith's probably arguably up there just because Finn Smith is a bit more of like a game manager. And I think that's what's interesting about this game, right? You've got Bristol Bears, you know how they're going to play, and you've got Bath, who can win in many different ways. And I think the difference is that Bath, I wouldn't be kicking away possession. I'm not talking about aimless kicks to just pin them back and put them in the corners. I'm talking about playing the territory game, getting the ball out of the field and down the opposition territory. I think this is a great test for Finn Russell. This is a game that I think could really deal with a fly half, an experienced fly half, taking the reins, taking control of a game, rather than just being like super exquisite, let's get everywhere all over the place. I just went forward a slide again. New tool, bear with me. I think that's what we're looking to see from Finn Russell in this game on Friday night. I want to see him control the game. I want to see him do expertly what we've seen Finn Smith do for England, for Northampton up until the final in the Champions Cup. I want to see Finn Russell do the same thing. I know he's capable of it. I know he can control a game and control the tempo and put his team in the right area of the pitch. Centres. Wilbert, Cameron Redpath, Max Jomo's name just randomly sitting in there. My point is they have depth, and I think any combination of these three, gravy. You've got a great centre partnership there. Back three. Cocknesinger, Glanville, Wilmer. Cocknesinger is, he's probably like your fancy pick, power runner, everyone knows him. Wilmer, understated, great under the high ball, quicker than he looks, and he's good at going and finding work as well. De Glanville, love the way he runs with the ball in hand, like how he counters attacks. Not the fastest fullback in the world, but he'll pick the right angle to attack a backline in as well, so that'll be really interesting to see. That's Bath. Let's move on to Bristol, right? Front row, Genge, Ogre, Laheath. Do I think Laheath's starting? Maybe not. Maybe they'll go for somebody else and have Laheath come on at 60, 80 minutes. They seem to be doing that recently. Genge, Ogre, Genge. I think he's really worked in his scrummaging the last couple of years and really focused on that rather than just being a ball carrying pressing the button again, Jesus. Rather than just concentrating on his ball carrying, he's really concentrated on his scrummaging. Those of us that know the dark art know that Genge has improved that massively in the last 2 years. I expect the front row battle to be fascinating in terms of when it comes down to scrum time. And Genge will obviously have his carries here and there as well. But that's what I like about Genge at the moment. Ogre, my opinion, best hooker in the tournament. Hands down, no comparison. I think he should have been picked for England over the Six Nations. He was unfortunate he didn't get included. He was my pick as a bolter for the Lions. Henry Pollock, his bigger name, that's why he's going. Excellent player, love him. And on the bench, they've probably got the second best hooker in the Premiership. So that's a huge strong point for Bristol Bears. And when we're talking about that line out as well, that's another thing as well. Gabriel Ogre, shades of Scott Brits with the way he can carry the ball. And he's also, got great hands, can pass it. I think hookers these days need to have a little bit of extra to their game, right? Whether it's ball carrying or work rate like Curtis Langdon for Northampton. I think the hooker position has developed a lot in the last 20 years. Hookers used to be smaller guys that could kind of reach under and hook a ball and steal it. Once it was seen that it was more useful to just have a big guy in the middle, like an extra prop for weight, that was the next evolution. And I think we're now seeing in the last 5 years the new evolution of hookers. You know, players like Dan Sheehan is probably the pinnacle of that. Guys that are both mobile and can add and be an extra back rower on the pitch, as well as also the size of a scrummager. Probably the position of biggest evolution, I think, in the last 5 years for me personally. Subtly. I don't think a lot of people will say that, but if you think about it and think about the facts, I think that's a big deal. Again, to talk about the second row is probably the weakest point for both teams. But then in the back row, you got Mata, Harding, Luatua. Luatua would probably make up for that line-out option that you know, maybe not lacking. Those guys can jump, but Luatua is very safe in the air. Very, very often used in that line-out. Great for jumping up. Work rate around the park, huge. Fitz Harding, understated 7, club captain, one of my favourite players to watch. Runs around the park like a freaking headless chicken, you know, energy like crazy. Turnover machine, ball carrying machine. Mata, also great player. Came to Bristol probably a little bit in his older years, but he's still playing like he's young, great player. And then we'll look at the back line for Bristol, right? Harry Randall and AJ McGinty. Harry Randall I like a lot. He's a little spark plug. He can just, you know, throw the ball around. He's so exciting to watch. He's always looking for gaps and sniping. And his partnership with AJ McGinty almost feels perfect, right? AJ McGinty, again, same as Tom Dunn, must be 52 at this point, but plays like he's 29. Guy still runs around and is able to boss around this back line and manage it at the pace that it wants to play in terms of counter-attacking from wherever on the pitch. Kicking as well, out of hand while running. Very, very good. Very experienced fly half. They will miss him next year, although apparently I think they're getting Tom Jordan, so he's also very good. Backline. So this 12, 13, 14. We'll talk about the wingers and number 15 in a second. This 3 players here is really interesting to me. James Williams I think is good. Janto van Rensburg thinks excellent. And Revovo, he's kind of like your secret weapon in this. Well, he's not a secret weapon. He's your main weapon in this Bristol backline. He's powerful. He's also quick. He's dexterous. He is an X factor. You know, I don't know if any of you must have seen a highlight of him doing that offload where he's basically on the floor and he throws it like 20 yards for like a perfect pass. Bristol have been having a habit, and who am I to question coaching? Bristol are having a habit of playing him on the wing in the last few games rather than in the centres. And I know that James Williams is great. I just feel like Revovo offers so much more of that 13 shirt. I feel like Revovo playing at 13 and Van Rensburg at 12 is a perfect mix of both players being quick and powerful, right? I don't know why they're doing this. Who am I to question Pat Lam? But me personally, I would be putting him in the centres. But they're liking to put Revovo on the wingers right now, so that's why I'm kind of putting this team up on the screen right here. Other backers, Richard Lane. I think he's a really understated player as well. Great player, lovely under the high ball, loves to take great lines. Good player. And Ibatoye. Another England player I think that was oversawn a little bit in the Six Nations. I think there's no doubt in terms of his finishing ability, how he can finish tries, how he can set tries up. He just kind of has this ability just to free will plays quite a lot. You know, he almost has this Pinard quality where he'll just like do something where his body's all loose and like flip it and then it goes, you know what I mean? Like he kind of plays like nobody else can play. He can play with like one hand on the ball all the time, like, you know, he's very, very skillful with Ibatoye, and he's quick as well. So, dangerous backline, right? This team plays this team, and there's no substitutions. I take this team every single time. That's not the problem here. It's not for Bristol anyway. The problem is that when we start to look at the benches of these two teams, there's a bit of disparity. So, without further ado, let's have a look at this. So, these are the benches for these two teams, for the two squads, for that games that I showed, if that makes sense. And we have a look at like the back bench. Dutoy, excellent, right? Maloney, excellent player. Ted Hill, excellent player, right? Alfie Barbary, excellent player. These are all guys that could start for most Premiership teams. Even other teams that are in the top 4. You know, I would take Alfie Barbary, for example, at 8 for Leicester Tigers. Absolutely. And then we look at the bench for Bristol, and it's not the same. Jan Thomas, very good player, but he's aged. He's an old prop that's been there forever. Joseph Owen, I really like the direction he's going in. When he comes off the bench, I've seen him streak down the sideline for a second row with ball in hand. He's got a great future ahead of him, but if you're talking about the quality of and the experience of Owen versus like Maloney and Hill and Dutoy, there's a bit of a disparity, right? Grondano, don't know if I've said that right. I like the way he plays as well. I've seen him come off the bench and make big differences. But if we're talking about differences and experiences in knockout games, there's a big disparity, right? And as I said, Jomu's not even in the list there or in the list that we have on the sheet previously for the last starting lineups of these two teams. This is where the battle, I think, can be won and lost. And I think the difference is, if we talk about some of these key points here, right? Can Bristol beat the bench? How do Bristol beat the bench? They play the way they always play. They come out like crazy. They want to score 21 points. The way that you can interrupt a Bath game plan with the bench that they have and then being comfortable being like, okay, this is what we do at 40 minutes. This is what we do at 20 minutes. This is what we do at 72 minutes. The way you do that, in the old Mike Tyson phrase, is everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? That's what you have to do. You have to come out, as Bristol always do, on frickin' fire, right? You need to be scoring points all over the place. You need to throw the game plan completely out the window. You need to hit them like a hammer and not let up, basically, for, 70 minutes? Until the point, you probably get under their skin within 25 minutes. You can interrupt the game plan, but the point is, once you've interrupted the game plan, you need to just keep going like crazy, right? You just need to keep hammering it. But how can Bath counter that? And this is what I've been talking about. Can Finn Russell control the game? We all know what Finn Russell can do with ball in hand. We all know his vision in attack as well, how he knows where the space is intuitively on the pitch, where he does a cross-field kick, or he does a pass that misses three people. We know he can do that. I think what we're looking for Finn Russell is control of the game, putting his team in the right area of the pitch to win the game. You could argue, if we go back here, this pack is arguably bigger than this pack, right? You have these guys scrummaging against these guys, probably in an arm wrestle for about 25, 35 minutes, probably 55 minutes into the game this can hold up. Then these guys are going to start getting tired, and these guys are going to have an advantage when all the bench comes on to replace them. That's what I'm talking about with your Alfie Barbary's coming off the bench and being a hammer to an anvil. Or more like a hammer to a very tired anvil that's going brittle and is ready to break. Analogy doesn't make sense, but bear with me. So, can Finn Russell control the game? Can he put his forwards in the right area of the pitch to win the game? There's nothing like being a forward in a game where you know you're in an arm wrestle and you fly half. I tell you who does a great job of this, George Ford. You listen to George Ford in interviews and he always talks about, what am I doing for the forwards? How am I making them less tired? How am I rewarding them for the efforts that they're doing? You know, your forwards, they steal a line out and you're under pressure and it's opposition line out. They're on your 5 metre line. You steal a line out. You get it secured, you give it to the fly half. Nothing is more rewarding than the fly half just punting it 60 metres down the pitch and you get out of your own half and the pressure's relieved. You know, you get a scrum, right? Your scrum's maybe struggling the scrum, you haven't engaged properly, you're just holding on, right? And it's almost winning, it's almost cracking. How are you rewarded? The fly half has picked out that the outside centre has an advantage against the opposition outside centre and they've made a 60 metre or 40 metre run down the pitch and there's a line break. It's those things like that. Can Finn Russell reward his forwards? Can he control the game? I think that's really important. Who will get advantage of the set piece? Talking about scrums and lineouts. As I said, this pack, I'd argue, after a certain amount of time, beats this pack. It's not guaranteed. I talked about in my Champions Cup review against Northampton and Bordeaux that, you know, the effort for Northampton was 10 out of 10 and Bordeaux was 10 out of 10 in terms of numbers 1 to 8 in the pack. The difference was that Bordeaux's pack was just bigger in the end, and so it kind of just it outlasted them. If these guys are having an 8 out of 10 day and these guys are having a 10 out of 10 day, it's enough to swap the advantage, in my opinion, right? Set piece is big. Scrum time is big. Line out, as I said, big. Probably a bit more of a weakness for both these sides than compared to other teams in the Premiership, the line out. Who can steal line outs? If we're talking about Finn Russell controlling the game, putting your players down the right areas of the pitch to try and compete, talking about putting the opposition in their own 22, can you get someone up to disrupt the line out? Can you interrupt that? Can you stop the opposition from doing the game plan that they want to do? You know? Finally, will Bristol stay one-dimensional? Controversial opinion. I think Bristol are one-dimensional. I would have said that to Pat Lam once at the Champions Cup and he was over doing interviews with TNT Sport, but he was busy. So, they're one-dimensional. They play an exciting game of rugby. It's lovely to see. It does a lot for the game. It's excellent for the game. It's one-dimensional. Play wherever you want on the pitch. Always be running to run with ball in hand. Always want to be counter-attacking at all times. It is one-dimensional. Can Bristol, well, can is a difficult word. Do you expect Bristol to defend like valiantly and then snipe when the opportunity's there? No. They're going to want to be playing no matter where they are on the pitch, whether they've been stopped over the game line for 75% of the match, they're still going to go for it. I'm interested to see if Bristol still do this in a knockout game, if they stick to their identity. My opinion really is yes. I think they do, but it's an interesting thing to think about. Because I think the players that they have the ability to change the style of gameplay that they do. They can also control the game. They've got the pack for it. AJ McGinty can definitely do that as a fly half, from the fly half position. They've got the back three and also Revovo as well, who I suspect will be playing in the back three, but could play in the outside centres. Can compete in high ball for turnover balls like that, for up and unders. Harry Randall, I think, is better at box kicking than people give him credit for. I know we saw in the Six Nations and the Autumn Nations when Harry Randall came on for scrum half positions, his box kicking wasn't great. I don't think that was indicative of how good he actually is at the skill. I think he's better at that. It's a question I just want to ask. I think I know the answer to it, but I think it's worth asking, especially with the semi-final. Okay, so that's Bath Bristol. Predictions? I'm going to go out there. I think Bristol win the game. I think the record speaks volumes. Pat Lam's in the media at the moment, talking crazy BS, 11 out of 14, like, we're the underdogs, like, our budget is 1/3 of Bath's, or whatever the crazy thing he said was, which, it is a bit wild that Bath have the players that they do, and they're apparently still within the salary cap, allegedly, but, they want to fight, and I think they'll give it to them, and I think Bristol are going to win. That's my personal opinion. Don't put any bets on it, but I think they will. Second semi-final. Tigers, Sharks. Tigers secure home semi-final on the last weekend of the Premiership. And even though it was a 20-point difference that they won by, they looked a little bit rickety. Sale Sharks, playing away from home. These two teams actually met not too long ago. I think it was 2 rounds ago in the Premiership. It was at Leicester Tigers. Leicester won 44-34. Fascinating game considering these are both two teams that you probably know for a bit more like an arm wrestle defensive battle, for it to be so high scoring. Sale, I think, are going to want to be out for blood on this one. I think there's a bit of camaraderie, rivalry between these two teams because I feel like they try and play in such a similar way, and I feel like every Premiership knockout stages we end up in as a Leicester Tigers fan, the last 3 or 4 are all against Sale, whether we're playing at Sale or playing at Leicester, I like the way Sale play because they play like us. They're very physical. It's put your head in the grindstone and push, boys. It's a lot of the same stuff, right? But that's not the simple analysis we're going to go for. We're going to talk about 2 teams here, and what I've done here is I've actually taken the teams for when they played against each other 2 or 3 rounds ago, right? And you look at the pack. Comparing front rows, so I suspect this will be the front row. We'll start with Nicky Smith, Montoya, Joe Hayes. Nicky Smith, I think, was probably unlucky to not get in the British and Irish Lions. I think he's a good loose-head prop. Montoya, leaving at the end of the year. I think he's getting a little bit older now, a little bit past his peak, but I think he actually had a really good game against Newcastle last week. And Joe Hayes, I think, goes from strength to strength, and I expect him to be starting in the summer tour for England with Will Stewart going on the Lions tour. Comparing that with who I think will be starting at the front row with Sale is Bevan Rodd, Luke Cowan-Dickey, and Asher Opoku Forger. Bevan Rodd. No one talks about how good this guy is at scrummaging. no one's going to remember this other than me, and maybe a few of you fanatical fans out there. Sale went away to, was it Bulls? South African team. I swear it was the Bulls. I felt like they were playing a team that had a blue shirt, and Sale wearing their horrible Just Stop Oil orange jerseys. Sale lost by like 40 points. It was like 44-0. Bevan Rod forces a yellow card scrummaging against Franz Malbert, who is the out-and-out starting Springbok tight head prop. Bevan Rod is an excellent scrummager, you know? He's not your new prototypical like Finn Baxters or Andrew Porters or Ellis Genges, where you're expecting them to be like, you know, super like getting around the park and doing all that jazz. When it comes to scrummaging, Bevan Rod knows what he's doing. And I think Joe Hayes has got a hell of a battle for him on Saturday afternoon. Karen Dickey, British and Irish line, fully deserved, I think. The only question is his line-out throwing. He seems to have some like microchip in him that, like, you know, he'll have like perfect line-out, and then the microchip will just go, and like 1 in every 10 will just go, and it'll just go somewhere straight. Sorry, not somewhere not straight, and that'll be an opportunity for Leicester to steal a line-out, so look out for that. Anasha Opoku-Forger, rising star in this Premiership. I expect him to be in the England squad. The real cool thing about Asher, which I don't think we'll see on Saturday because of Bevan Rod and also who they have on the bench, he can play loose head and tight head. That's really cool. Very rare to see. It's not like backs where you just have to, you know, I feel like backs when you're in, and forgive me, backs, this might seem like some shade, but I feel like if you're playing, I think centres are different, inside and outside centres is a very different position. But if you're talking about wingers, I really do think that playing left wing and right wing, I think the difference really is like learning to brush your teeth with your right hand rather than your left hand. Honestly, you know, don't kill me, don't shoot the messenger, but you tell me, like, prove to me I'm wrong. Scrummaging is different. Loose head, you know, you've got to have amazing core strength, even though you're only scrummaging against the tight head on your right shoulder, because you're only pushing off one shoulder, your core strength has to be incredible, right? Whereas if you're tight head, you're having to hold a hooker and a loose head on both your shoulders unevenly. And as I'm talking about like hookers, all the hookers these days are just another excuse to push through the pack. That's something you have to prepare for, right? I've talked about front rows enough. You guys don't care. I care too much about the front row. Let's talk about second rows. Leicester Tigers, Cameron Henderson, Ollie Chesham. Ollie Chesham, obviously British and Irish line. Cam Henderson, I think he's excellent. I think he's come back from injury this year. I think he had like a torn MCL or an ACL or something. I saw him do it the year before, and he's come back this year, and I think he's been excellent. Big guy, mobile as well, and also an excellent line-out option. I think he's Scottish. Would love to see him getting into the Scottish team, but that's a conversation for another time. We talk about the second rows for Sale. What we've got here is we got Ben Bamba and we've got Johnny Hill. Johnny Hill, rumours he's going off to France maybe or Japan next year. I think, you know, sometimes in a team you just want a big fucker, you know? You just want a big motherfucker, and that's what Johnny Hill is, you know? I think he's gotten rid of some of the stuff he's been doing here. You can see he got a naughty yellow card against Leicester Tigers last time, but I have to give him credit where credit's due. I think he's gotten rid of a lot of that discipline issue that used to really kind of harpoon him when he was playing for England, you know? I feel like he was a menace for like a good 45, 60 minutes, and then all of a sudden he'll just do something really stupid, and there'll be a penalty against him or a yellow card against him, and he just F's the whole performance up with that. I feel like he's cut that out, ignoring the yellow card he got against Leicester last time. Ben Bamba, pretty good. You know, maybe we have a Dupree brother in there instead. Yeah, I don't think there's not much to take between these two sides in terms of advantage and disadvantage. If we're talking about front rows again, I would say probably, you know, they're both good, but I think Sale have probably got the edge there in the front row a little bit. Back rows, right? Okay, cool. We've got, excuse me, Ernest Van Ren, Tom Curry and Jean Dupree. I probably expect Ben Curry to be starting with Tom Curry. Such a dangerous combination, those two Curry brothers. It is also pretty cool that you've got two twin brothers who also look like the human embodiment of a great white shark playing for a team that's literally called Sale Sharks. That's badass. Not only is that badass, but what's also badass is I think they've got two of the best back rowers playing for them in that team, in the world at the moment. They're unbelievably good. I was a real shame. I thought that Ben Curry didn't go to the British and Irish lines. He's not on the tour at the moment, barring an injury to somebody else. But because I would argue, I think Ben Curry's probably been better than Tom Curry in the Six Nations, and that's not saying Tom Curry's been bad. I think like you're talking about Tom Curry being a 9 out of 10 and Ben Curry being a 10 out of 10. I think Leicester's really got their work cut out for them with that. Fortunately, I think they've renewed their pack in terms of their age quite a lot in the last 2 years, so they might be able to keep up and clear them out. But they've got a big day ahead of them if they've got the two Curry brothers that are competing at breakdowns at the whole time. Jean-Luc Dupree, we're talking about big motherfuckers like Johnny Hill. Jean-Luc Dupree is the big motherfucker you got in the back row. Guy is huge, pretty good ball carrier, but he just looks like one of those guys that, you get to about 70 minutes into a game, you start a game and you're like, I've got to tackle that guy early and quick because, otherwise he's going to want to be running all over me. But you get to about 60 or 70 minutes and you look at him and that attitude of, I've got to hit this guy turns into, oh, fuck, I've got to hit this guy again. Big dude. Back rows for Leicester Tigers, Hanno Limbenberg, who I believe is club captain. No, that's Montosha. Has been club captain. Tommy Raffel and Ollie Cracknell. Hanno Limbenberg, I think he's unfortunate he is South African because it means that, I think he probably would have gotten a few more South African caps. He's a great player, big guy, gets around the park as well. Bit more dexterous than you'd expect for a big guy of his size. Tommy Raffel, Jackal captain, he is Mr. Jackal. Basically, he's kind of like, what am I thinking of? Someone who just like, what's the... I'm not going to be editing this out. I'm going to remember what this is. Bruce Lee. What's the Bruce Lee quote? I don't fear the man. I don't fear the man who learns 1,000 different kicks. I fear the man that does the same kick 1,000 times. It's Tommy Raffel with the Jackal. So good at it. Unbelievably good. Ollie Cracknell, his Welsh counterpart in that 8 shirt. Big dude. Again, we're talking about guys that, you don't want to be tackling after about 60 or 70 minutes in a game. Ollie Cracknell fills the void of that for Leicester Tigers. Not that was a void. There was a void when Jasper Wiese left, and he's filled that pretty well. I think he has the most carries and the most carry meters in the Premiership. Might be wrong on that. I think I heard that about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Might have changed since then. Cool. So I think what you've probably noticed when we're talking about the packs of these two, very evenly matched, and that's what we're talking about, the physicality between these two teams. Who's going to get the one-up on here? Who's going to get the advantage? Really fascinating from a forward pack perspective. Let's talk about the backs because I think there's a little bit more to talk about here. Where do we start? We'll start with the home side. We'll start with Leicester Tigers. Jack Van Poortvliet, Andre Pollard. Van Poortvliet has come back from injury and has been in the form of his life. I expect him to be starting for England every single game if he's healthy during the summer tour. He's been that good. I'm not just a Leicester, super fan. I think he's been excellent. Knows when to snipe. Looks quicker than he did pre-injury. And another thing about it is just confidence getting the ball out and knowing when to go. Sometimes I felt like Van Poortvliet pre-injury would be like, am I going? Am I kicking? Don't know. Kind of just had like a little bit of like behind the ruck fever. Not anymore. Decisive. Willing to run with ball in hand, not afraid of contact. Also willing to just get it out and get it going. Whether Andre Pollard's sitting in that 10 shirt or whether he's got Joseph Woodward at that 12 shirt, who we'll talk about. Pollard. Forgive me for saying this, because he's a 2-time World Cup winner. I don't think he's been in the best form for Leicester this year. I don't know what it is. Sometimes he makes a mistake and you're just thinking, come on, man, we've seen you play. We've seen you be the best fly half in the world seriously to that extent. Sometimes you just forget he's a 2-time World Cup winner when you're watching him play for Leicester. And then sometimes you remember why he does. He'll have a pass that's just like so direct, but it goes like 30 metres and it hits an outside centre in stride and you're just like, that's the Pollard I like. I just hope we get for my sake, I hope we get the second Pollard out of those two. I think he has the potential to be a great player in this game, especially with this arm wrestle that it's going to be. It's a Pollard game. I've just flipped it over to the bench again. It's a Pollard game. It's a game that he thrives in terms of enabling the forwards to do the work for you, putting your team in the right areas of the pitch. Centre partnership, Woodward Catter. Leicester, I think, have got a plethora of great centres in their team. They brought over Pearce from the Waratahs, who I was a big fan of. They brought Kata over with Dan McKellar, I think that was 2 years ago now. But Joseph Woodward, Mr. Woodward over here, has fought his way into this team and beaten out two guys that I would say are international calibre centres to make that 12 shirt his own. Great future ahead for Mr. Woodward. He's a young player. I'm really excited to see how he goes, especially because I feel like England are lacking some serious centres these days in terms of depth. I'm not saying we don't have great centres. I think Dingwall, I think Ori Lawrence are both excellent. But I think past that point, we're starting to be like, who are the inexperienced guys that are going to come in? Watch for Woodward in the future, and watch for him this weekend as well. Kata. Talk about people difficult to tackle. Also dexterous. Plays a lot like Tuipulotu in terms of like, he can run you over, he can also step you, he can also pass it 30 metres outside to someone that you're not even looking at because you're trying to tackle him. I always thought Kata's more effective in that 12 shirt, and I like Woodward at 13 just because I think he's more of a direct runner than Woodward. But it has worked for them. We talk about the back three as well, okay? Ollie Haskell-Collins, Adam Radwan. Those two names I've just said in 11 and 14 should be in 11 and 14 for England in the summer tour. Ollie Haskell-Collins, I believe, is leading the Premiership in tries. And Adam Radwan, since he came over from Newcastle midway this season, I think has been in tremendous form. I always thought that Adam Radwan... I watched Adam Radwan when I was playing for Newcastle, and whenever he got the ball in his hand, I always thought, this guy looks super dangerous. The problem was, he'd get the ball like 2 or 3 times a game. Coming to Leicester, I think someone's had a chat with him and said, go searching for the ball, attack from the middle of the field, look to take advantage of spaces that they are. And you can see him go looking for work, which I think has been the big difference of him coming from Newcastle over to Leicester. I'm not criticising the player for that. He probably got told at Newcastle to play a certain way, and he's come to Leicester and he's been told, go and be Chris Ashton on this pitch. Go and find the work. And he's done that excellently. And it's been paying off with, I think he's now the new hot name in the Premiership at the moment. Freddie Stewart. We all know Freddie Stewart. Excellent player. A bit critical of him being a bit slow in that 15 shirt. But I think, domestic rugby level, I don't think that's an issue. I think that's only an issue at international level. Excellent under the high ball. Good counter-attacker as well. Good kicker. I think he was probably the best player against Newcastle last weekend. Was a real steadying hand in that backline for returning the ball for territory. So I really like how Leicester's backline looks. Stepping on my laptop again. Talk about Sale's backline, and sorry, I'll go a bit quicker. We'll talk. So Gus Waugh, understated, great player. He's a bit of a smaller scrum half, and I know we're talking about small scrum halves. Scrum halves are typically your smaller players anyway. But he plays twice his size in terms of his bravery and his courage. And he has the advantage that he has a very big pack in front of him. Great passer, good box kicker as well. I've seen, he does a very good competitive high ball. We'll put it that way. Let's not get into superlatives. George Ford, former Leicester Tiger. Probably one of the informal fly halves as well for the Premiership this year. A lot of people were calling him to go to the British and Irish Lions based on his form this year for the Premiership. I just feel like he's hit that stride of just like, he knows what he's doing at all times. The game's slow for him. He knows when to kick it, when to pass it, who's going to be where and what. And I've already talked about him earlier on, I think during the Bristol and Bath review, when we were talking about what are we going to be doing at what area of the pitch to help our forwards out to win the game. That's pinnacle George Ford. He knows how to elevate every other number on this pitch to succeed. He's the glue. He glues everything together. He elevates. Centres. Rekiti, Massey White, Rob Dupree. Both great. I think they're both understated players. There's a mix of power and intelligence with these two as well. And then we're talking about, I'm just going to speed this up a little bit here as well, back three for Sale. I think these are probably one of the most understated back threes, I think, in the Premiership. I think we're in the age of a moment of like some of the best wingers and fullbacks that we have in the world right now. And I think that leads us into positions where we have this, where, Sale, we always talk about kind of like this 8 here and maybe the 10, and we think about them as a physical side, right? But these back three of Reid, Roebuck and Carpenter, Reid, so elusive, really hard to tackle, right? Roebuck, big physical guy, but can, he's quick as well. We saw him get his chance for England against Wales in the Six Nations, and he took it, in absolute stride. Another player I'd like to be seeing playing for England in the summer again regularly, but not over Haskell, Collins and Radwan. Sorry, got to get my Leicester Tigers guys in. Joe Carpenter. England have been looking for an answer for when George Furbank's injured at fullback. We've been thinking Marcus Smith, trying to put him there, just to have a little bit more speed in that counter-attack. Someone that, has a fly half brain, but also has the speed and the independent pace and dexterity to kind of like make people miss and stuff like that. Joe Carpenter, in my opinion, is the answer to that for England. And I think it would be criminal if he's not in the England squad. And I think it's criminal unless George Furbank's healthy if he's not starting at 15 for England regularly. He's one of my favourite fullbacks in the Premiership. I don't know how he's not gotten a scene in England so far. I understand why he wasn't starting for England during the Six Nations. The backline they were starting in general was all very inexperienced. And to put someone else in that had like less than 10 caps in there, I think would have been a big ask, considering if you look at the players that they have. Mitchell's pretty experienced, but Finn Smith had just been coming in. Dingwall just came in. Can't remember who was playing 13 for England, but I felt like he was inexperienced. There was a lot of inexperience in that back line. So, Summer, Joe Carpenter, put him at 15, it's his time. Hell of a runner. Love the way he runs with the ball in hand. Really elusive. He's one of these guys that, like, it's like that he's not as powerful as Duhan van der Merwe, don't get me wrong, but it's like that comparison of just like being able to take like not lose any speed at all when you're taking that kind of angle, but just just outrunning people, just gazelle like shit, So basically these teams are kind of the same. Big packs with turnover machines in both of them, and backs that, don't get the love they should do, and the talent because of how talented they are. They don't get that love because they're overshadowed a little bit by these packs. And I think that's kind of how this game turned into a 44-34 event the last time over. We're talking about this being an arm wrestle, two physical teams, but these can be high scoring teams as well. Both these attacks can really get humming, especially when George Ford's going and when Andre Pollard's at his best as well. So it's going to be more of an exciting matchup than I think people are going to give it credit for. Look at the two benches of these teams as well. I think this is where the advantage kind of goes to Leicester Tigers a little bit. We'll talk about it a little bit. So Charlie Clare, I think, is probably going to be the guy replacing Montoya in the future. Young guy, good hooker, big guy. Cronin and Dan Cole, both old guys, but both very experienced and really, really good scrummagers. So if we're talking about earlier when we're saying like Bevan Rod might be out scrummaging Joe Hayes, look for these guys to come on and steady the scrum if that turns into an issue. Matt Rogerson and Ilioni, I think, have both been really good servants for Leicester this year, getting a look in for the odd game here and there. Rogerson, I think, played really well last year. And Ilioni has just gone from strength to strength. Talk about big guys. He's big, but not only that, he's a hell of a jackler, right? He can offer a lot of different things in the pack, and I really like the way he's developed this year. Ben Youngs, this is going to be his last home game, which I'm fortunate enough to get tickets to. Last home game for the most England capped scrum half there ever was. Most capped England player there ever was. So looking forward to watching him for the final time at Mattioli Woods, Welford Road. Jamie Shilcock. If I'm Leicester Tigers, I'm starting Volovola. I only know who Volovola really is just because I'm a devout Leicester Tigers fan. Volovola, I feel like, hasn't really had the opportunities this year that I think he should have been afforded. I feel like any time he comes on the pitch, he adds a little spark into that backline for Leicester Tigers. He gets them moving, he gets them running. A bit like Adrian McGinty in terms of how he can get the guys just running down the pitch and getting the ball out quickly and wide. I would expect Volovola to start here instead of Jamie Shilcock, but that's just me. Michael Checker has preferred Jamie Shilcock over Volovola most of this year. And Dan Kelly, who I probably expect to probably be on the bench as well. Shame he's going to Munster. I think he had a real bright future of maybe playing for England in the future. If he wasn't Irish, he might be Irish, I'm not sure. And then we look at the bench here, and I feel like this is where the difference is, right? So we've got Ben Curry, which is a big name. I think Will Griff-John is also, he's been starting for Wales in the Six Nations. He's a good scrummager. Rafi Quirk and Daniel Dupree, I think they're all great players, right? But if you look at the terms of quality of the bench that we have between these two, again, we're talking about knockout rugby. We're talking about keeping cool heads in situations and knowing how to play the game. This isn't a league game where, you know, a win's like, okay, and a loss is like, okay, we'll come back next week. This is winner takes all, and when you have that, the difference is having experiences like Dan Cole, Ben Youngs, James Cronin against players like Will Christophe, Rafi Clerk, very good player, but inexperienced in terms of knockout rugby. That could be the difference between the two teams, especially with Leicester being at home. Which leads us finally on to key points, and we'll try and keep this quick because I know I've been going on and ranting and raving for too long here. So, who wins the physical battle? Big question. I don't know the answer to it. I would hesitate to say Leicester, because I think if we look at starting packs, I think Sales is slightly bigger, but then if we look at the sub bench, I'd say that Leicester has the advantage, but it could be the point that Sale, you know, outbeat them and get physical first. And, you know, it gets into a psychological thing. You beat them physically early, you get in their head, and you win the physical battle. That's really intriguing, and I think it will get won within the first 30 minutes of the game. And if it's not, then it's anybody's game. Which Leicester Tigers team turns up? Leicester Tigers, I think, of recent have been excellent. They've put some really good performances out there, but they've also, over this season, put some real nothing performances out there. I think against their game against Glasgow, it was really bad. I feel like there was maybe a game against Harlequins as well. They basically just did not turn up. They did not look like they were ready to play. And I think that was the week after, that's when Michael Checker started bringing the flag into the changing room to basically get the boys up and going. They've been very hit and miss. I think of recently, I think it's easy to forget the fact that they've been missed because they've been so much hit since that round 16 exit against Glasgow. I think they've been excellent since then. But there is still a question of inconsistency, whereas I don't feel like I have that same question with Sale. I feel like Sale, we know who's turning up. We know that they'll be ready and up for the game. Whereas Leicester, there's a chance in there that they don't turn up ready and firing on all cylinders. I definitely feel like they started the Newcastle game a little bit like that last week. And there is a potential for them not to be all at sea or all hands on deck or whatever you're talking about, for them to be in the game. And that really ties into that first point there. If they don't turn up ready to play the game, they get stomped on by Sale early, and it'll be, you know, curtains early for this Tigers team. Home field advantage. Leicester Tigers have, I believe, the biggest rugby domestic stadium in England. I feel like it's maybe the biggest domestic stadium in Europe, if you're not counting the Aviva. So that's massive for them. Expect to sell out this weekend, 25,000 people in the stadium. People will be really excited to have a home semi-final. I don't feel like we've had one since the 2022 campaign when Borthwick was in charge and they won. So I feel like that's going to be a big thing this weekend. And if Tigers can get under the skin of Sale early on, see that becoming more and more an advantage as the day goes on. Will it be as high scoring as last time? 44-34 to Tigers against Sale. Could be as high scoring. If it is, who do I trust more to close out the game? Leicester probably. But the problem is, I think like Sale's defence, probably after they had Leicester Tigers score 44 on them, I feel like Alex Sanderson probably got out the whips and chains to really punish these boys after that, because they would not be happy with that. You know, I think if it turns into a high-scoring game, it plays to Leicester Tigers a little bit more. We talk about that backline and the quality that they have. I feel like Sale are more of an opportunistic backline. They want to look for, you know, where the gaps are. So I think if it's high-scoring, Leicester take it. And I think if it's not, then Sale take it. Which leads me to my prediction. Got to go for the homer pick. I think Leicester Tigers win it. There's so much emotion with Leicester Tigers. Michael Checker announcing he's going to leave halfway through the season. Me almost throwing my Xbox controller across the room. Ben Youngs retiring. Dan Cole retiring. It's the last home game of Mattioli Woods, Welford Road. To see a sign off for them. I can't see them not being up for this game. However, Sale, you know, this is a rivalry. They're going to be up for this physical battle. So it's by no means is it going to be. By no means is it going to be like a quick game, an easy game or whatever. But if Bristol win against Bath, as I predicted, I think the winner of this game wins the Premiership. I think because of Bristol's one-dimensionalness, which I'm definitely going to tell Pat Lam about at one point in the future, maybe in the future, that some team like this, either Sale or Leicester, will get very physical with them and really frustrate them, like Leicester did in recent weeks. Recent weeks, probably like a month ago, but in terms of like game weeks, it wasn't that long ago, and they defeated Bristol quite handedly. That was the game I was talking about where Checker brought in the flag and put it in the changing room. So that's it. That's it for the preview. Probably went on for a little bit too long. I enjoyed this format. I'm definitely going to do this again. Keeps me focused about what I'm talking about, and hopefully maybe I get the laser pointer working next time. Oh, there it is. Maybe it just doesn't work on the TV. It works on there. I don't know. Anyway, that's it. I'm done talking now.